Welcome back to The Inquisitive Analyst. I'm your host, Marcus Udikang. Today is the third of a three-part series where we look back to clips from earlier interviews on project management. We'll hear from Terry Schmidt on practical strategic management principles for PMs. Cheryl Lee discusses why PMs are from Mars. Colin Thompson gives us this lessons learned as an Agile coach. Benjamin Anyacho provides this impactful story on vision and overall leadership. We'll also hear from Elizabeth Harrin, empowering us with how to successfully engage stakeholders. Soha Karjawally recommends project escalation paths. Klao Bell-Lewis on how to actively measure stakeholder engagement. Mayte Mata with her experience leading diverse teams. And Mike Griffiths gains this deeper understanding using visual learning tools. We'll end with Karine O'Donnell providing tips on engaging the project team. So have a seat, enjoy the show, and we'll see you at the end of the video. What are some practical strategic management principles that project managers should practice, and why should they practice these?
I think there are several of them. That's a great question. The missing one that I see seems to be cause-effect thinking and the formulation of a project as a quote-unquote strategic hypothesis of the form if then. We get caught up in the activity levels because that's where the action is, but really you need to start the design process at the top and work down. So, begin with the big picture, disaggregate it down into the smaller pieces and implement. So I think there are really three core principles in strategic management. One is the setting of objectives and linking them hierarchically. If we build it, they will come. That's a testable scientific hypothesis. The second is clarity of measures. What do you mean by they will come? Who? How many people? Give me quantity, quality, time, cost, customer. And the third is the idea of assumptions, risk factors. So to take that example I just gave from Field of Dreams, if we build it, they will come, provided that or assuming that people know about it, right? Or that there are roads to get there, all that kind of stuff. And those are the external factors. Risk is always present, but it's usually present beyond the boundaries of our project.
I was watching one of your videos, and it said it was called PMs are from Mars and BAs are from Venus. And it kind of reminded me of an old school movie from way back. But what did you mean by that?
So you're right. It is a title of a presentation that I've conducted numerous times, very recently as well, with a PMI chapter. And actually, it was, I think, a combined event with PMI and IVA chapters in the US. You said a movie, but most people may be familiar with the book, PMs.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, so I think it's like, so my title is PMs are from Mars, BAs are from Venus, and the book are, I think, Men are from Mars and Women are from Venus.
That's the one, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Is it actually a movie?
Maybe it is a book. Yeah, it sounded like a movie. I thought it was. My mistake.
It does sound like a good movie. It's okay. So similar to the moral of the book and that story, and sometimes it may feel like your cohort is from a completely different planet on a project. Between the PM and the BA. I find sometimes just with open communication and understanding of where the other person is coming from, what their needs are, and so forth, we can actually learn to coexist and work a lot better with our counterparts. So whether you're a project manager or a business analyst, there are things that we can do in order to bridge that gap between, the PM and the BA. And, kind of going back to what we talked about earlier with the PMI Guide to Business Analysis and PMI putting more emphasis in the business analysis space, that was absolutely one of the mandates behind that. They conducted many studies. You may be familiar with the PMI Pulse of the Profession reports.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that they produce every year. And poor requirements was consistently like one of the top 3 items that were in there. And that's kind of what stemmed all of this. And they were like, oh, well, it sounds like we need more work in the business analysis space. And I would say that in today's world, even, there are many PMs that still don't understand the value of a BA. And I think that's natural and normal right now, just because the PM profession is just so far more advanced than where business analysis is right now. PMs have been around for a lot longer. Think about the number of PMPs versus the number that are BA certified. So the concept behind this presentation is taking a look at, you talked about that fine line. Well, where is that fine line? And that line is really between the project side of things versus the product side of things.
Right.
So if you take a look at product scope versus project scope and understanding the difference between the two, that's where you're going to know where that fine line is. Understanding, generally difference between product stakeholders and project stakeholders, again, that's where that fine line is. Risk management, project risk, product risk. Again, if you understand that, you'll know where that fine line is, and you'll know how to the idea is better collaborate with your counterpart in order to execute a project and I guess deliver on products more successfully.
You worked with IBM in Shanghai, obviously, as an Agile coach. What was your experience? Any lessons learned for aspiring Agile coaches out there?
I think for aspiring Agile coaches, if I had to say lessons learned was be patient with your teams, because if a team needs an Agile coach, Agile trainer, Agile consultant, it means that they're still learning how to work in an Agile way. And sometimes with Agile, you have to unlearn your previous way of working before you can adopt a new way of working. And it takes time. One good thing about Agile gives the team a lot of autonomy. It puts a lot of control into their own hands. And I'll tell you what, Marcus, some people don't want that. Some people.
Oh, yeah. Autonomy, no, not me.
Right. Some people want the manager to tell them what to do. And I'll tell you why. In Asia, it's very difficult because people feel that if my manager tells them what to do and it doesn't work, then it's not my fault. But if I decide what to do and it doesn't work, it's my fault. And somebody else will get the raise, somebody else will get the promotion. So people don't want that responsibility sometimes. So I'll tell folks, be patient, because you really have to coach and guide your teams on how to not just do Agile, but how to be Agile. And the second thing I'll say is continuous learning. Keep learning. Go to LinkedIn, pay $30 a month for LinkedIn Learning, and learn, take all the classes you can on LinkedIn or whatever platform, but continue to learn. Because Agile, it's not new, but it's still going to new places now. Agile has moved out of just IT side, and now we have a term called business agility, which is really Agile outside of IT.
You're founder and international facilitator of Leaders and Thinkers, which happens to be this global leadership think tank and network. In this role, how have you provided vision and overall leadership?
I believe in leadership a lot. Sometimes leadership has become a bad word. I believe that leadership is not a position. It's a choice. And that was what drove me to start that online group, more than 8,000 members. And also because of my passion for nonprofit, I started nonprofit management profession. It has about 32,000 members from almost every nation on earth. The purpose is to galvanize leaders, to know that we can lead, we can choose to lead. Don't leave vacuum. When there is need for leadership, somebody has to step in and lead. And oftentimes we are taught that leaders are appointed. You appoint managers, but you don't appoint leaders. Leaders is a choice. You choose to occupy that space, occupy that vacuum, and fill it up. So those are my motivation. And we get managers. We try to offer value to our members, those who participate. I have one contribution on Leaders and Thinkers. I had about 1,500 contribution, one discussion, because he was passionate. People want to contribute to the topic. So that is a little bit about it. It's one of those side things I do. I'm very much involved in leadership development, and I believe everyone can be a leader. One of my life goals is to mentor 1 million people. And I probably may not touch 1 million people, but I believe I should be able to touch several people that will eventually reach out and mentor 1 million people.
Now you've got this book out, Engaging Stakeholders on Projects, How to Harness People Power. Any recommendations on how to successfully engage stakeholders within the stakeholder lifecycle?
Ooh, well, for those of you watching on YouTube, this is it, and it's full of those ideas. So I think if I had to if I had to narrow down 60,000 words into a soundbite for you, Marcus, I'd say we identify them first, because one of the biggest mistakes I've made in my career was not identifying stakeholders, who then got very angry when a project launched and they didn't know about it. Not to be repeated. Very sensible lesson learned there. But then, so you identify the right people constantly as we go through, because it's not a one-off thing. And then think about, what are we engaging them in? Why do we want them? And often we engage them in the deliverables, in the, we need them to do something, or we need them to be something for the project, but we don't engage them in the process. So often I've worked with stakeholders who haven't done project management the way I do it before, or they haven't done it in a formal way, or they've never worked on a project, because, some people manage to get through their lives without having to be involved in projects. And they might be an operational person who needs to come in and support on one particular thing, or they've come to a point in their career where their manager has seconded them to you for whatever reason, because they're ready to take on something new. And I think having that moment where we explain what a project is, what my role is, what their role is, what we're trying to do, how it's all going to fit together, what the roadmap is, the big picture, and things like, why do we do risk management? Why do we do change management? Why can't you have every change that you ask for? Those kind of conversations are part of that engagement process as well. And then just treat them nicely. I mean, they're not resources, they're humans. And if we treat them like partners, and as if we were on an equal level to them, because often, I've seen situations where project managers have been very arrogant because the person working in the team has a lower status job in the hierarchical structure of the organization. But actually they're a subject matter expert in the thing that they do, and the value that they bring to the project is their knowledge. And I've seen project managers be very subservient to senior leaders, oh yes, of course we can do that. And actually you can say yes, you can say no to them, they're only humans, but we have to have sort of respectful partnership conversations. And we call it respectful challenge, where you don't have to, sometimes the stakeholder, the sponsor says, do this, and you do it because you can't say no. And I get that. I've been there. You have to do it. But there's still a moment for you to reflect and think, is this the right thing? How can I make the point? He'll overrule me anyway, potentially, but I feel like it's my professional duty to say these things. And if you start out on a kind of footing like that with everybody, then hopefully that helps you build that credibility later on, because you become a trusted voice and not just an admin person who is just going to do whatever they're told.
What type of escalation path do you recommend or have you used in the past?
Well, definitely, you need, as a PM, you need to escalate, but you need to escalate wisely. Like you have to do your job, but in the same way, you don't have to procrastinate when you need to escalate. Don't waste time when the project is at risk. However, don't go to the don't take the escalation path without having a face-to-face communication with the person that has caused this or has an issue. The issue is on his part, and of course something very important, because conflict happen and we have to deal with them, but still we don't have to finger point. We have to make sure that to pinpoint the problem, not the person, because sometimes there are some problems that can arrive. Nobody is perfect, but still, if you try to escalate, start by seeing the person, try to fix it. If it didn't work, tell that, well, I tried this and this and this, it didn't work, and I see these are the impacts, and we are at risk. I'm going to escalate and to the correct, using the correct channel, so they are not surprised. I think this is the way how I always did, and I suggest this way. Of course, one thing that I kept in my previous project, actually, that had some difficulty, like kind of a matrix, that if you need to escalate on this and this and this topic, so this is the person, or the correct person in what kind of issues or type of problems that you can have, delays or whatever, so you know how to deal with it fast and you have this up front.
How do you measure whether the stakeholder engagement work you're doing is successful or not?
For me and my personality type, qualitatively, constant engagement, conversations. I listen very keenly. Information goes a very far way with me and my training and my background. So I take a lot from what is said and what is not said. However, you also use quantifiable trackers, not forgetting from the outset what the priorities were for each stakeholder. And of course, in addition to being a student of your environment and paying attention and using your emotional intelligence, you also would have had those conversations to get the specific feedback about the priority areas. Whether it is, don't embarrass me, or they may say something that, it's not explicit, but, bring so-and-so into the meetings. Why? Don't ask twice, So when you pay attention to those things, you take note, okay, manage risks carefully, manage reputational risks carefully, ensure there's high visibility. If somebody, for example, speaks about high visibility around the project, what would be satisfactory? In Jamaica, there is a major newspaper, which some traditional persons think that's, the thing becomes official once you get coverage there. Understand if that's a priority and go for coverage there as part of the process. And I had that experience when I was working with one company that was building a new headquarters, and it was a huge deal. It had a lot of impact and direct impact on the community, but also on the country because of the company which won the bid. Now, there were companies outside of the country and companies inside of the country which bid, and a company outside of Jamaica won, and that had to be very carefully managed. And throughout the process, communicating around the project was very important, and specifically how and the channel. So understanding that in terms of what your key leaders prioritize, but also the target audiences who he or she as your leaders and your key sponsors want to focus on, those things can help you to understand if you're hitting the target or missing the targets about what their priorities are.
How do you think, say, project managers can overcome cultural backgrounds when they're leading diverse teams? Is there any secret sauce that we need?
Yeah, I think that we need to learn and create self-awareness about our culturally based perceptions, norms, or patterns of thinking, and adapt our behaviors according to the specific cultural context that we are providing some service or we are working. After my first working experience in person outside of Spain, my main focus was to develop at least 3 areas that helped me to overcome. The first one was communication. As I told you, my voice tone was loud. My hands were moving so fast. So effective communications are key to don't get lost on translation. Also, non-verbal communications, moving the hands. Or, for example, in Spain, when you met someone, you gave a firm handshake, you do direct eye contact, or you kiss someone in the cheek. That will be so unusual or even offensive in other cultures. So learning communication for each culture, that's key. In the second place, workplace etiquette. This is something that I learned. Punctuality is relative. And that can sound odd, but being from Spain is not a big deal if you arrive 5 to 10 minutes late to a meeting. However, my first meeting in Germany, I was late because they were expecting that I arrived 10 minutes early. However, in United States or South Korea, you are expected to be on time, not later, not early. So this workplace etiquette is something that we need to learn before traveling or dealing with other cultures. Finally, it's last but not least important, organizational hierarchy. In some cultures, you need to know that junior staff or middle management may be or may not be allowed to talk in the meetings. So if you are leading with the meetings and you see some people quiet, understand the cultural difference about the country that you are working. And if you need to challenge these people, maybe do it outside and not in front of their managers. So those are the 3 key takeaways and something that I was working hard since my first experience: communication, etiquette and understanding the organizational hierarchy in each of the countries.
How do we gain a deeper understanding of project management using visual learning tools?
Anytime we can visualize an idea, it helps us gain clarity. PM Illustrated is my latest endeavor, and it's about explaining project management to visual learners. So it's all about creating a big picture first, allowing people to see relationships and the structure and drill down into details, and then explain things graphically. So there's a lot of mind maps and infographics, as well as cartoons and things to make it fun as well. So PM Illustrated is actually a complete learning curriculum for the PMP exam. It's been a big shift for me, but one I've really enjoyed, using less words and more pictures. And it seems to resonate with people, especially younger learners that don't want to be reading 800 pages of the 6th edition of the PMBOK guide anymore. The 7th edition we created is a lot smaller, but there's still a lot of dry, boring academic content out there for a lot of this material. And project management is anything but dry and boring. We're wrangling all these people with different ideas and objectives and kind of agendas or desires. And so it's a dynamic and challenging career. So why is project management like courseware so dull and academic and boring? It didn't seem to gel. So PM Illustrated, yeah, cartoon animals, mind maps and quizzes and games and points and badges to try and present this information in a different way and hopefully a more engaging way.
What are some suggestions on how to start to engage a project team?
I think the first thing I always like to say to people is just be human. I know, and this is something I've learned firsthand, when you first come into a project, whether you're an experienced project manager or whether you're still green, I think a common mistake we make is we think we need to have all the answers. We think because we have this title of manager, and yes, people do look up to us, but they look up to us even before we start to speak. And I think we make a huge impact. I mean, we influence people whether we like it or not, because we're interacting with people all the time. So I think the first thing that people can do to engage the team really is to realize that you are influencing from the moment you step into that role. And what that really means then is the way you show up matters. The way you speak to people matters. The way you engage and the way that you're vulnerable to people matters. People don't necessarily need all the answers from you because they often have them themselves. But what people need from you is to be able to connect and relate to you. So I think that's probably the first tip I always say to people. Realize that you're an influencer. Realize that, just like you, other people have their vulnerabilities, particularly in your team. They look up to you, and because you have a title, they assume you're not afraid of things, and so you want to be able to bring down guards and introduce trust. And you do that by letting people know, hey, I've been a project manager perhaps for 100 years, but I've never dealt with you before, and I've never been in this situation before. So we're going to learn from each other. And yeah, I bring lots of things to the table, and so do you. So how about we work as a partnership? And then there is obviously an opportunity for you to also let people know what the minimum requirements are, what your minimum requirements are, because as a leader, you still need to get a job done. So it's not all about fluffiness, but it is about engaging and connecting and saying, well, here's what I need from you, So before we even get onto sort of what the scope will be, what the business case and all those things are, what do I need from you? What are my expectations of you? And then vice versa. It has to be a mutual conversation, because if you know what people are expecting of you, it's much easier to succeed. And
hope you enjoyed part 3 from our past interviews on project management. Look out for upcoming videos every other week. Until then, have an amazing day. We'll see you soon. And now a word from our sponsors. The Lewis Institute provides an enterprise project management program that does more than just train PMs. It helps support them from the CEO level on down. These courses help certify project leaders and prepare them to pass the PMP exam.